The sun rose over Maple Grove Estates like it was auditioning for a postcard, golden, flawless, the kind of October light that makes every lawn look photoshopped. Our wedding day. Mine and Jade's. I stood in the mirror, adjusting the rented tux that still smelled faintly of the dry cleaner's plastic, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach that had nothing to do with cold feet. Because in Maple Grove, no day is ever just a day. Not when Karen Thompson, our HOA president, had spent the last 6 months treating my modest two-story as a personal crime scene. You know the type. Karen wore pastel cardigans like armor and spoke in that syrupy voice that could curdle milk. We're all in this together. David, she'd coo at board meetings while sliding another violation notice across the table. My lawn was 0.2 inches too long in Sector 3. My recycling bin had once been left out 12 minutes past the approved window. And when Jade and I started planning the reception at the community clubhouse, paid for in full, permit signed, she'd smiled that tight little smile and whispered, "Just remember, dear, the covenant is very clear about visual harmony. No riffraff." Riffraff. That was her favorite word for anyone who didn't drive a leased Mercedes or have a lawn service on speed dial. I'd stayed quiet. Not because I was scared, though the $500 fines had started stacking like bad poker hands, but because I'd been watching. Every email, she CC'd the entire neighborhood with passive-aggressive reminders. Every time she'd accidentally leaked my teacher's salary in the private Facebook group. Some of us work in education. Bless their hearts. I'd screenshot everything. Printed copies. Time-stamped. Filed in a plain manila folder I kept in a glove box like a loaded gun. Jade thought I was overreacting. I told her I was just being a good historian. Teachers know how to document the fall of empires. The clubhouse looked like a magazine spread that morning. White chairs lined up on the polished oak floor. String lights glowing softly even though it was daylight. The scent of fresh lilies fighting the faint chlorine from the attached pool. Jade's family had flown in from Chicago. Mine had driven from the suburbs in a caravan of sensible sedans. 250 guests who represented everything Maple Grove pretended to be. Doctors, lawyers, a few tech bros who'd bought in before the prices tripled. And me, the middle school history teacher who'd somehow landed the pediatric surgeon daughter of old money. Karen had stationed herself at the entrance in a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than my car. Clipboard in hand, like she was auditing the apocalypse. "David," she trilled as I passed. "I do hope the guests understand the noise ordinance. We wouldn't want to disturb the aesthetic." I smiled a small, tight smile I'd perfected over months of fines. Wouldn't dream of it. Karen. Inside, my blood was already simmering. But today was about Jade. Not her. The quartet started tuning. Guests settled. Jade appeared at the back on her father's arm, radiant in lace and pearls, smiling at me like I was the only person in the universe. My best man Jake leaned in. "You clean up okay for a guy who grades papers for a living?" I whispered back, "Just wait till you see her." Wagner's bridal march swelled. Every head turned. Then the heavy double doors at the far end creaked open like they'd been waiting for their cue. A figure shuffled in, 60s, maybe, long gray hair matted under a filthy baseball cap, layers of torn coats and rope-belted pants that smelled of every night spent under an overpass. Duct tape shoes. The odor hit first. Sour. Lived in. The unmistakable perfume of someone who hadn't had a real shower in months. A collective gasp rippled through the rows like a wave. Phones came out. Karen's voice sliced through the music like a whip. "Security, immediately. This is a clear violation of Section 4.7. No unauthorized persons. No vagrants. No elements that detract from community standards." Her security guy, big, ex-cop type named Marcus, moved fast, hand already on a man's arm. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." The stranger didn't fight. He just stared straight at Jade. eyes wide with something that looked like wonder instead of fear. Jade froze mid-aisle. Her bouquet trembled. Then she did the one thing nobody in Maple Grove saw coming. She pulled away from her father's arm and stepped forward. "Wait," she called, voice clear and steady. "Marcus, stop. I know him." Karen's laugh was pure acid. "Oh, honey, you can't possibly. Look at him. This is exactly why we have rules. Property values. Dear, the covenant doesn't care about sob stories." She turned to the crowd like a conductor. "Everyone, please remain calm. We'll have this handled in 30 seconds and resume our beautiful day." But Jade was already walking toward the man, wedding dress brushing the floor. "Mr. Harrison," she whispered. The name landed like a grenade. The man's weathered face crumpled. Tears carved clean tracks through the grime on his cheeks. "Jade Richardson, you Eurovision. The church, no. The clubhouse," went dead silent. 250 of Maple Grove's finest held their breath while Karen's face turned the color of spoiled milk. She hissed at Marcus. "Remove him. Now. Or I'll have your contract reviewed by the board." Jade ignored her completely. She handed her bouquet to her maid of honor and closed the distance. Then she did the unthinkable in Karen's pristine little kingdom. She hugged the homeless man. Right there in front of God, the quartet, and the HOA president who looked like she was calculating how many fines she could levy for public displays of poor judgment. "Mr. Harrison," Jade said, voice thick. "I've been looking for you since medical school. I can't believe it's really you." Karen stepped forward, voice dripping fake concern. "Jade, sweetheart, this is clearly an emotional moment, but we have standards. The man is obviously unwell. Let security escort him out quietly. We can discuss compassion after the photos." That was the moment I felt the folder in my glove box calling my name. I'd stayed silent for months, watched Karen destroy people one citation at a time. But today the silence broke. Because Mr. Harrison wasn't just some random vagrant. He was the reason Jade had become the woman I loved. And Karen? Karen was the reason he'd ended up on the street in the first place. Jade turned to the entire room, still holding Mr. Harrison's arm like he was made of glass. "Everyone, I want you to meet the man who saved my life when I was a kid no one believed in. This is Mr. Harrison, my teacher from Lincoln Elementary all the way through high school. He's the reason I'm a doctor today. The reason I know how to fight for kids who fall through the cracks." A murmur rolled through the chairs. Jade's mother, Patricia, looked ready to faint into her champagne-colored clutch. Her father, Charles's face went the color of a ripe beet. Karen, however, recovered like a pro. She raised both hands in that practiced, "I'm only trying to help" gesture. How touching. Truly. But the covenant is very specific. Section 12.3 clearly states no loitering or unsightly persons on common property. We have children here. Property values to protect. I'm sure Mr. Harrison understands. Mr. Harrison tried to shrink back. "I'm sorry. I saw the announcement in the paper. I wanted to see her happy. I'll go. I never meant." "No," Jade cut in. Fierce now. "You're staying. You walked me through every hard day when my own parents were too busy building empires. You stayed after school for years. Ate lunch with me when the other kids wouldn't. Convinced my parents to give me counseling. Wrote my college recs. You shaped me. If anyone belongs here, it's you." Karen's laugh was brittle. "Oh dear. This is all very Hallmark. But we have 250 guests waiting. Photographers. A schedule. Perhaps we can schedule a sensitivity meeting next month. Right now. Marcus, please escort the gentleman to the parking lot." Gently, Marcus hesitated. He'd seen Karen fire 3 previous security companies for not enforcing enough. But Jade's eyes locked on mine across the room, asking without words. I stepped down from the altar. The folder in my head felt heavier than the tux. "Actually, Karen, I said, voice low but carrying. Before we start throwing people out, maybe we should talk about who really violates covenants around here. The room went stiller than a graveyard at midnight. Karen's smile froze. David, this is hardly the time for one of your little teacher lectures. We all know you're still adjusting to our standards. I smiled back, the same small smile I'd used on every violation notice. Adjusting, right? Like how Mr. Harrison adjusted after his wife and baby died 12 years ago. Lost his job, lost his house on Elm Street, right here in Maple Grove, because someone on the board decided grief was no excuse for an untrimmed hedge. Fines every single month until the foreclosure papers showed up. Funny how those fines stopped the week after he was gone. Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. That is ancient history and completely irrelevant. The board followed procedure. Procedure, I echoed, tasting the word like spoiled milk. I've been documenting your procedure for 6 months. Karen, every email, every back-channel text to the board about encouraging certain residents to sell. Every time you waived fines for your golf buddies but tripled them for anyone who dared question you. Including me, the guy whose only crime was teaching kids and marrying the woman I love. Jade's hand found mine. Mr. Harrison stood straighter, tears still falling, but now mixed with something like hope. The guests were leaning forward now, phones recording openly. Karen's pastel armor was cracking. She tried the concerned mom voice again. David, you're clearly stressed. Weddings are emotional. Perhaps we should reschedule the entire event until cooler heads. No, Jade said, loud enough for the back row. Mr. Harrison is staying. In fact, he's walking me down the aisle. And if anyone has a problem with that, they could take it up with the new board after today. Karen's laugh came out as a bark. The new board? Sweetheart, I've been president for 7 years. The covenants are ironclad. You can't just. But the room was already shifting. Whispers turned to murmurs. One of Jade's hospital colleagues, a pediatrician who'd lost her own home to medical bills, stood up. Wait, you foreclosed on a grieving teacher? Over grass length. Another voice. My principal. I remember Mr. Harrison. He was the best teacher this district ever had. Phones were out. Screenshots flying in group chats faster than Karen could blink. I reached into my jacket pocket, not the manila folder, not yet, and pulled out the single page I'd printed that morning. Section 4.7, right, Karen? No elements that detract from community standards. Funny, your own pool party last summer had red Solo cups on the lawn for 3 days. No fine, but a man mourning his family gets bankruptcy notices. Maybe we should read the covenant out loud, starting with the part about board members not using their position for personal vendettas. Karen's face went from porcelain to puce. This is slander. I will sue every single one of you. Jade squeezed my hand. Sue away. But first, Marcus, there's a bathroom downstairs. Mr. Harrison deserves to wash up for the ceremony. And someone find him a clean jacket. We're not starting without him. The security guard, bless him, actually smiled for the first time all day. Yes, ma'am. What happened next was pure Maple Grove chaos wrapped in silk. Half the guests stood like they were ready to bolt. The other half, mostly the ones who'd quietly hated Karen's fines for years, started offering help. Jake produced a spare dress shirt from his car. One of Jade's cousins donated dress shoes. Within 20 minutes, Mr. Harrison emerged looking like the teacher he used to be. Thin, weathered, but with dignity carved into every line of his face. Karen tried one last stand to the microphone. This event is now in violation of noise and occupancy clauses. I'm calling an emergency board vote. I stepped up beside her, voice calm as a history lecture. Before you do that, Karen, maybe explain to the room why Mr. Harrison's house was the only one on the block foreclosed during the exact month you bought your third vacation rental. Public records are funny that way. The gas that followed was sweeter than any wedding march. The minister cleared his throat like he'd rather be anywhere else. Shall we proceed? Karen's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No sound came out. For the first time in 7 years. The Queen of Maple Grove had nothing scripted to say. Jade took Mr. Harrison's freshly washed arm. The string quartet, bless their confused souls, picked up the march again. Slowly, deliberately, they walked down the aisle together while Karen stood frozen at the side like a lawn ornament someone had forgotten to remove. Every step was a middle finger to every fine she'd ever issued. When they reached the altar, Mr. Harrison placed Jade's hand in mine with shaking fingers. I never thought I'd get to do this, he whispered. Thank you for seeing me. I shook his hand, calloused. Rough, but steady now. Family doesn't knock, I told him. It just shows up. The vows were simple, but the weight behind them had shifted. Jade looked at me, then at Mr. Harrison, then at the entire room. I promised to love you the way Mr. Harrison taught me, without giving up on anyone, even when the world says they're too broken. I added my own line, eyes locked on Karen, and I promised to stand up when the rules stop protecting people and start protecting egos. The I do's landed like thunder. Applause exploded, real applause, not polite country club clapping. Karen tried to slip out the side door, but Marcus, now clearly enjoying himself, stepped politely into her path. Ma'am, the board president usually stays for the full ceremony. Covenant says so. Page 42. The reception that followed was Maple Grove's version of a revolution served on silver trays. Mr. Harrison sat at the head table, clean but still visibly the man who'd survived hell. Jade made sure his plate stayed full. Guests who'd once crossed the street to avoid that side of town now lined up to shake his hand. Dr. Patel from the hospital cornered him about adult literacy programs. My principal offered him a substitute gig starting Monday. Karen lurked near the punch bowl, clutching her phone like a life raft, texting the board in frantic bursts. Every time she looked up, someone was staring. The whispers weren't subtle anymore. Did you know she foreclosed on 3 widows last year? Heard she waived her own late fees, but fined a single mom on Oak for a political yard sign. I waited until the father-daughter dance. Technically 2 dances now. Jade danced first with her biological dad, then crossed the floor and took Mr. Harrison's hands. The song was an old one he used to play in class. You've got a friend. Half the room cried. The other half filmed it for the group chat titled Karen Watch 2024. That was when I made my move. I walked straight to the makeshift stage where the DJ had set up, tapped the mic, and held up the manila folder like Exhibit A in a trial nobody saw coming. Folks, I said, voice steady, since today is about second chances, I figured we'd give one to the truth. Karen, you mind if I read a few highlights from the last 7 years of board minutes? Her face went the color of expired cottage cheese. David, this is neither the time nor the... Section 9.1. I read aloud. Board members shall not use enforcement powers for personal financial gain. Interesting, because the 3 rental properties you bought in 2018, all on streets where you suddenly started issuing triple fines the month before the foreclosures, including Mr. Harrison's house, the one you listed for sale 2 weeks after he was gone. Phones rose like a forest. Karen lunged for the mic. Marcus gently took her elbow. Ma'am, let the man finish. It's only fair. I kept going. Email dated March 12th, 2023. From you to the entire board. The new teacher on Maple needs to learn our standards. Start with the lawn. Escalate quickly. That was me. 6 months of citations while I was planning a wedding. All because I dared suggest at the last meeting that maybe we should have a hardship fund instead of a new fountain. The room erupted. Not angry, satisfied. The kind of satisfied that comes when the bully finally trips on her own rules. Karen's pastel cardigan suddenly looked like a clown suit. She tried the concerned voice one last time. This is all taken out of context. I was protecting everyone's investment. Jade stepped forward. Mic in hand now. Protecting? Or protecting your third vacation home? Mr. Harrison lost everything because you decided grief was ugly. David lost sleep and savings because you decided teachers don't belong. How many more people did you break before today? The vote happened right there on the dance floor. Someone yelled, all in favor of removing Karen as president. 200 hands shot up. Even her own golf buddies looked away. She stood there, clipboard dangling, mouth opening and closing like a fish that finally realized the pond had rules too. By the time the cake was cut, Karen was gone, driven away in her own leased Mercedes while the board treasurer quietly announced an emergency meeting for next week. The remaining guests toasted Mr. Harrison like he was the guest of honor he'd always deserved to be. The evening stretched long and golden. The kind of night Maple Grove usually saved for perfectly manicured block parties. But tonight the air tasted different, like freedom with a side of petty revenge. Mr. Harrison sat at our table telling stories about young Jade that had the whole room laughing until they cried. She once turned a science project made entirely of macaroni, he said, eyes twinkling. Called it the pasta periodic table. Failed the assignment, but passed the test of imagination. Jade wiped tears, grinning like the kid she used to be. I watched Karen's empty chair across the room like it was a war trophy. The folder had done its job. By morning, the neighborhood chat would be exploding with screenshots. Tomorrow, the new board would vote. And next month, the Fountain Fund would quietly become a hardship scholarship named after Mr. Harrison. But the real victory wasn't the folder. It was the way Mr. Harrison's shoulders finally relaxed when Jade asked him to stay the night in our guest room. No more sidewalks, she told him. No more wondering where the next meal comes from. You're home. He cried again, quiet, grateful tears. I never thought I'd teach again, or belong anywhere. You never stopped teaching, I said. You just got a longer summer break than most. 3 months later, the transformation was visible to anyone driving down Elm Street. Mr. Harrison's new apartment, paid for by a quiet collection from the neighborhood that suddenly discovered its conscience, had a small garden out front. He'd started volunteering at the community center teaching GED classes. The same center Karen had once tried to turn into a members-only gym. Karen herself? She decided to spend more time with family upstate. Translation: the board had voted her out unanimously, and the new president, a retired judge with zero tolerance for nonsense, had sent her a polite letter reminding her that covenants apply to everyone, including former presidents. Last I heard, she was selling essential oils on Facebook with the caption, "Living my best life free of toxic environments." The irony wrote itself. Jade and I settled into the kind of quiet happiness that only comes after surviving a war. Friday nights grading papers together. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market with Mr. Harrison in tow. He'd become Grandpa Harrison faster than anyone expected. When Jade came home from the hospital one crisp February evening, glowing with the news, the first person we told wasn't her parents. It was him. "I'm pregnant," she whispered over spaghetti at our kitchen table. Mr. Harrison's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Then the tears came, happy ones this time, and he hugged us both so hard I thought my ribs would crack. "A baby," he kept repeating. After everything, our daughter Grace arrived on a snowy morning that turned Maple Grove into a Christmas card. Mr. Harrison was the first non-medical person allowed in the room. He held her like she was made of starlight, whispering stories about her mother's macaroni periodic table while Jade and I watched, exhausted and deliriously happy. The neighborhood changed too. The new board rewrote half the covenants within 6 months, added a hardship clause, removed the visual harmony nonsense that had let Karen play dictator. Fines dropped. People actually talk to each other at the mailbox instead of glaring. Turns out when the bully is gone, the whole block breathes easier. One year after the wedding, I stood in our backyard watching Grace toddle after Mr. Harrison while he pointed out tomato plants. Jade leaned against my shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "if Karen hadn't pushed so hard that day, we might never have stood up. She did us a favor in the worst possible way." I laughed, the dark, satisfied laugh that only comes after watching a tyrant trip over her own rules. "Remind me to send her a thank you card. Care of whatever essential oil cult she joined." Mr. Harrison looked up. Grace balanced on his hip. "You two saved me," he said simply. "But the real miracle was you refusing to let the rules win. That's why I tried to teach all those years ago. Rules are just suggestions written by people who forgot they were human once." Grace reached for his beard and giggled. In that moment, the whole ridiculous saga, fines, folders, Karen's pastel rage, felt worth every second of silence I'd kept. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's patient. It's documenting. It's waiting for the day the queen of the castle forgets that even castles have foundations made of people. And when those people finally stand up, the whole kingdom comes down in the most beautiful, satisfying crash you'll ever hear. Grace is 3 now. She calls Mr. Harrison Pop Pop and demands he read the same book about a brave little girl who fights dragons every single night. The dragons in the story look suspiciously like pastel cardigans. He never complains. Jade's parents visit more often these days. They even apologized, awkwardly, over coffee, admitting they've been too quick to judge the man who once saved their daughter when they couldn't. Charles Richardson actually shook Mr. Harrison's hand last Christmas and muttered, "I was wrong about a lot of things. Progress, I guess." The community clubhouse still hosts weddings. But now the covenants include a line about compassionate exceptions written in the new president's very practical handwriting. No one mentions Karen anymore except in the occasional group chat meme that shows her face photoshopped onto a lawn gnome. The jokes write themselves. I still teach middle school. Still grade papers on Friday nights. But every time a kid walks into my classroom looking lost, I remember a disheveled man stumbling through double doors and the woman who refused to let the rules win. I tell my students the same thing, Mr. Harrison once told Jade. Nobody's too broken to start over. Sometimes they just need someone brave enough to break the rules with them. Last week, the new board sent Mr. Harrison a formal invitation to join as community mentor. He cried again, happy tears, and accepted on the spot. "I lost one family to tragedy," he told us over dinner. "I gained another because 2 people refused to look away." Jade and I sat on the porch swing last night, watching Grace chase fireflies with Pop Pop. The lawns are still perfect. The house is still expensive, but the air feels lighter. No more whispered threats about citations. No more Karen standing at the gate with her clipboard like the Grim Reaper of good taste. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with handcuffs or headlines. Sometimes it arrives in duct tape shoes, crashes your wedding, and reminds an entire neighborhood that the real covenant, the one that matters, is the one that says everyone deserves a second chance. Maple Grove learned that the hard way. Karen learned it the hardest. And Mr. Harrison, he finally came home. So the next time your HOA president sends a violation notice because your recycling bin was 3 minutes late, remember this story. Keep the folder. Keep the receipts. And when the day comes that the queen trips over her own crown, smile, because the crash is going to be glorious. Thanks for listening to this wild ride through the underbelly of suburban paradise. If you've ever battled an HOA Karen, drop your city and your worst violation story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this tale of silent endurance turning into sweet payback made you smile even while you were furious, Smash that like button and subscribe for more neighborhood nightmares that end exactly the way they should. See you in the next one. Neighbors, stay petty, stay patient, and never, ever let the rules win.